Welcome to Time for Health. I'm your host, Rachel Fall, and we're very glad you've joined us. Today we're going to talk about the D.A.R.T program, the Drug Abuse Response Team here in Ottawa County. As always, I tell you when we have these shows, we always talk to somebody about a different topic. Don't necessarily use anything you say here for medical advice for yourself. You're always going to want to talk to your healthcare providers before you make any changes. But we have Trevor Johnson. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Talk a little bit about yourself.
My name is Trevor Johnson. I'm from Port Clinton, Ohio. I graduated from Port Clinton High in 2001. I work for the Ottawa County Prosecutor's Office Drug Abuse Response Team. I've been a fireman since 2001 for the Port Clinton Fire Department, running EMS. I'm also a certified police officer.
Very cool. So you are the D.A.R.T officer, I think, officially.
I am.
Okay.
And I have a partner now.
Okay. Awesome.
I have Bill Marshall, who's my partner in crime, and he does a lot of good work. So.
Very cool. Now talk about the D.A.R.T program. Like, how did it start? All that kind of stuff.
So it's no secret that in society there is an opiate epidemic, and we don't just narrow ourselves down to just opiates, but that is more specific to what our main purpose is. But people were dying because of this. Families are affected. Services are overburdened with the stress of the epidemic. So Prosecutor James Van Aerten wanted to have a quick response team to try to intervene into these people's lives, to try to divert them from jail, because the jails are full. We can't keep stuffing people in jail and expecting different results. So they started a D.A.R.T team to try to intervene to get them to the services that they need to get them the help.
Okay, so it's through the prosecutor's office.
It is.
And it's been around since
August of 2017 is when we started. We hit the ground running. That first week we had an overdose. So we're pretty steady. Nothing ever happens in Ottawa County is what they always say, but I've got plenty of stories for you.
Show you otherwise.
Absolutely.
So yes, it's an epidemic, and it has so many effects, so many ripples. So
absolutely. Kind
of trying to have a proactive approach to the issue.
Absolutely. Think about your community. Think about somebody at your church, somebody at work that is raising somebody else's children because the parents have some sort of an issue that they might not elaborate what that issue is, right. But I'm willing to bet that it's either addiction or mental health. Those are the two right. main reasons why aunts and uncles or grandparents are raising other people's children, and Job and Family Services is just overwhelmed by placement.
Yeah, and you said it's not necessarily just opiates.
Right.
Any kind of overdose.
We've had other calls. Unfortunately, methamphetamine's making a run right now. Do people necessarily overdose and die off of methamphetamines? Not to say that it can't happen, but what happens is with opiates, when you overdose on those, it suppresses your respiratory drive and you stop breathing. That happens more readily with opiates than it does with methamphetamines. So we'll respond and help anybody with anything, and we don't just respond to overdoses. We take voluntary referrals. If somebody wants help, we'll help them. We don't care if you live in Ottawa County. Okay. We don't care where you live. We're willing to try to link you up to services.
So it started because of overdoses and specifically
Absolutely.
Deaths, but you are there for any kind of drug abuse, drug addiction situation, right. to try to another piece of the puzzle.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we show up and we triage people when we arrive either on scene or we arrive at the hospital. Okay. Take it back a step. The way that it all begins mm-hmm. is that somebody calls 911, hopefully, and then dispatch sends an ambulance. They'll send the proper law enforcement. Okay. And then they will dispatch a D.A.R.T officer okay. to respond the best way that they can. Hopefully that's the scene, because sometimes people don't want to go to the hospital. They want to sign out against medical advice. Mm-hmm. But what they don't realize is that just because Narcan woke you up, that doesn't mean it's not going to wear off before you get to the hospital.
Right.
So we tried to convince them to go to the hospital, get the proper medical care. We work with the Magruder ER staff. They're fantastic in what they do. And then we link them to services, get them to some sort of a safe discharge plan to get them linked up with services and assessments, and even detox if they need it. It really depends on the story. Sometimes, most times, mental health is definitely involved that we try to link people up to. When I show up at the hospital, you can always ask them one question: are you happy with where your life is at? And no matter how hard-headed somebody may be, they still honestly answer, well, no, I'm not happy with it. And here's a perfect opportunity to try to make a change. And Ottawa County is a great place to live because we have a lot of good collaborations and resources to link people.
We do. So what would happen before a D.A.R.T officer was dispatched if there was an overdose?
So what was happening was that they would either be woken up with the Narcan, and then they wouldn't go to the hospital, and that was it. And then, so guess what happened to those people when they accepted no services and no help? They didn't know how to fix the problem on their own. So what they went back to doing is exactly what they knew
they had just done to get them in that situation.
Right. And there's so much with addiction that drives people to addiction that makes them keep doing it. But the best way that I can liken it to the lay person, people are like, why do they keep doing drugs? Right. And well, I'll tell you. One, imagine waking up every morning with the stomach flu, and then the body aches and throwing up and diarrhea and nausea and vomiting. Every morning you woke up in withdrawal and you felt like you're going to have the stomach flu. Can you go to work like that? Can you go to school like that? Can you do anything and function and take care of your kids like that? And the only thing that makes you feel better is more opiates. So that's why this vicious circle of they get up in the morning, they feel sick, they have to go out and they have to go get drugs, and that's what their primary focus is. And a drug habit's very expensive, so that leads you down the path of crime and stealing, and you know, a lot of people are affected, you know, in that way from thefts.
You said that if somebody overdoses, somebody will call 911. Hopefully. Hopefully. So not everybody does?
No. They're scared.
Worried about getting in trouble.
They're worried about saving their own skin, is primarily self-preservation. But unfortunately, we've had people that haven't survived because help wasn't called in time. But another point to that is that, you know, a lot of the overdose death scenes that I've responded to, the people were by themselves. They were isolated because they're ashamed of their addiction. They're not going to be out openly using their drugs. So they say, hey, I'm going to go take a nap, or maybe they burned every bridge and they just live by themselves, and nobody's there to call 911. And then they overdose, and then they just go to sleep and they die. And that's it.
Is there some kind of like a Good Samaritan law, or
there is?
If they're with other people who are maybe also doing opiates, but one of them overdoses, can the other person call 911?
Yes.
And not and still kind of
there is, and I'm not going to do it justice because I'm not an attorney.
Sure.
But yes.
Okay.
Call 911. That's
911.
Yeah. Call 911 because I assure you, our mission is to help people in these situations, and we don't show up looking to bust people. We're showing up to help people and to break the cycle. Right. One of the coolest things about Prosecutor James Van Aerten is our mission is to for the D.A.R.T team is to help people in addiction, and the Drug Task Force is after traffickers. They're not after addicts, they're after traffickers. Right. So we're not talking about addicts that are just in possession. That's not our main mission. Our mission is to help addicts to treatment. Traffickers, they need to go away because they're poisoning the community.
Yes. And it's probably a whole separate show. I don't know that we want to get into this, but the whole how people start using, like, nobody wakes up in the morning like, you know, I think I want to become addicted to
Nobody
something.
says that.
It's-
Nobody says I want to be a heroin addict.
It's through
It is.
pain, it's through depression, it's through
You're exactly right.
all kinds of stuff.
You know, in the whole gateway drug discussion, and that's why it's important that our D.A.R.T team spends a lot of time across the county schools, and we go into the classroom and we explain to them that nobody, you know, set out to be a heroin addict. You know, I asked them to raise their hands. Who wants to be a veterinarian when they grow up? A teacher, you know, a police officer, a soldier, and you know, everybody's raising their hands, but like nobody raises their hand and says, I want to be, you know, a heroin addict and strung out on drugs. It doesn't happen like that.
Right.
But there are other causes, you know, the overprescribing of opiates back, you know, between 2000 and 2010 especially.
Yeah.
But I've even had a soldier that shattered his foot in the service, that the VA got him painkillers and hooked on painkillers, and then when they said, oh no painkillers, we can't do it, they shut him down. When the pills became unavailable, they switched to powder. And the powder, it started out as heroin, but then now it's much cheaper to produce fentanyl and put it in. So,
and so that is another issue as well.
It is.
Not just heroin, not that there's, you know, good clean heroin or good clean whatever, but,
right.
but there is.
They'll say quality as opposed to good, right.
But it's, you don't know necessarily
you haven't
what's
a clue
in there.
You know, and I say it sarcastically, but when you go to your drug dealer, does he give you a package that has a label on it with your name on it, with the dosage, with how to take it, and you know, does it have dosage and directions on it? Absolutely not.
Right.
They don't even know what's in it. You know, by the time it gets up to Port Clinton, Ohio, you got to think of the drug food chain.
Yeah.
The drugs don't originate in Port Clinton, Ohio. The drugs end up in Port Clinton, Ohio, but they make many stops through many bigger cities and before they work their way up to Ottawa County and Port Clinton, Ohio. So, but each time it stops and crosses hands with somebody, somebody's messing with it.
Yeah.
Imagine ordering a pizza that's been handled 15 times.
Right.
Pretty disgusting, right? Well, these people are using drugs that have been handled multiple times and tampered with. So they have no clue what's in the drugs.
Right.
And they say that China white is the heroin that is white heroin is what's killing people. But I'm gonna go on to tell you that I haven't seen white heroin. I've only seen it's been gray, it's been light blue, it's been light brown, I've even seen it with pink tinges.
Okay, so it stops in a lot of different places and gets kind of messed with, and so you don't know what you're putting in your body. And again, and people think, my gosh, if you end up in the ER, if you end up in law enforcement hands, that wouldn't that be your rock bottom?
You know,
No.
not always the case. One of my good friends, he and I were out reaching out to a family. Ken Bauer, he's the director of Lighthouse Sober Living. He's a good friend of mine, but the family asked him, well, what was your rock bottom? And he looked at them and he said, which one? I had like 5. And Kenny, Kenny laid it out there, and his honesty and his integrity made them feel better about what they were dealing with. But
it's such a tricky.
It is. There's no cookie cutter answer, and there's no one process that's gonna work for recovery.
Out of that habit. And that's why
everybody's recovery is a little bit different. Yeah. There's some very common components to it,
right.
And we'll get into that. But there's some very common components, but everybody's a little bit different.
That's why the D.A.R.T program is there to kind of put a step in there, a piece of the puzzle to kind of get somebody.
Here's the nice thing is that we're a tour guide to this. Is the best way to put it. Like, how better to go on this uncharted journey that the people can't fix their own problems. Right. They don't know how to fix it. They wouldn't be there in the first place if they knew how to fix it. So go to the D.A.R.T and we'll guide you to these places. People don't know how to advocate for themselves. For one, we do.
Right.
We know how to get you into these appointments. We can have you in detox in same day. We can have you in detox within hours, and a lot of times we can have you in assessment with Firelands or Bayshore counseling within a day.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
We are going to take a quick break, and we will be right back. talking about the D.A.R.T program with Trevor. So just kind of talked about how the program started and some of the ins and outs of addiction and overdoses and that. So hopefully somebody calls 911.
Right.
They dispatch emergency and law enforcement and you or Bill, and you kind of take it from there, meet them on scene, meet them in the ER, and what are some of the other pieces to the puzzle? Like,
well, we do a triage, and then once they're triaged, we assess, are we dealing with, is it the chicken or the egg with mental health? Are they depressed and that's why they're using drugs? And was this a cry for help? Like, is it a suicide issue and they need to go that route? Or was it truly an accidental overdose? I would say most of what we deal with are accidental overdoses.
Okay.
We have to gauge how addicted the person might be, because if they go through withdrawal, if somebody's feeling sick, they won't commit to anything. And they know they're going to feel sick. They're going to have that stomach flu feeling all the time until you get them to a detox center. And there's a lot of misconceptions about what a detox does, but if you have symptoms, like if you have nausea, they can give you a Zofran, a Phenergan, something an anti-nausea type of a drug. If you have diarrhea, there's Imodium. If you have body aches, they have ibuprofen. And if you're anxious, they can give you some sort of a benzo to kind of mellow you out. But ultimately, they want to try to keep you off of
whatever got you in that.
Yeah, whatever your drug of choice was, which. Opiates of any kind, it could be anything from heroin to Percocets to Suboxone to, there's the Vicodin, the list goes on. If you're sick off of one thing, if you can't get heroin one day, but all you can get is Vicodin, you can substitute back and forth. But the powder's where it's really dangerous because you don't know what's in the powder. But I will say that right as of late, Ottawa County and more so the region, because drugs come from Fremont, Sandusky, and everywhere else, in Toledo especially, but we're getting fake Percocets that are stamped with fentanyl. They look like Perc 30s, but it's really stamped fentanyl. People are overdosing off of them. So you've got counterfeit drugs out of there.
Wow.
And you don't even know what pill you're taking.
Wow. So
I really caution people. We've had suspected overdose deaths off of it, and suspected overdoses off of it.
Wow.
So it's
so
really scary.
Like you said, you treat whatever, you just work with them wherever they're at,
right.
Whatever the issue is, whatever the need is, you just start there and connect them with.
So I've got a kind of my theory of this, the wheel theory. Think of a bicycle spoke. All the spokes that go inside of a bicycle wheel, each spoke is important to the stability of that bicycle structure. An addict has a very broken wheel. They might only have just a couple of spokes anyways, because they're homeless. They burnt every bridge that they've had in their family because they were stealing, and with lies and manipulation. But we try to put spokes into people's lives. So the spokes that we have, like sober living, you have to have good housing for people to go.
Because the thing is, you can't leave the hospital or detox and go back
to the same situation.
The same living situation or friend situation or whatever.
Yeah. If you're not going to change your people, places, and things, nothing's going to change for your situation. If you're not going to cut out old habits and old places and your same old routine, nothing's going to change. And addicts have taught me the most about addiction. And my favorite thing about addicts is that nobody can call you faster on your crap faster than an addict. So I use peer support. That's another spoke in the wheel.
Sure.
I use peer support to help them, one, to call them on their crap, but also to get them to meetings and to get them to appointments and stuff like that. And we also work to get people to their appointments. We also deal with, we use Vivitrol, which is a medication that is used to, it's a monthly shot that people get, and if they're on Vivitrol, then they can't get high off of opiates.
Gotcha.
But Colleen Berry is works for Firelands, and she can have you seen, if it's Monday through Friday, she can have you seen on a whim. And just that's how much people want to help for this.
Right.
Everybody will stop and drop and accommodate, because you have to strike when the iron's hot with somebody in addiction. If you give them the opportunity to manipulate and wiggle out of it, they're going to.
Sure. Overdoses and overdose deaths. So some of the statistics in the area. We have the silent silhouettes, and there used to be an awful lot of them.
Right.
And each year there are a little bit fewer deaths. But overdoses are still happening. Talk a little bit about
overdoses are still happening, and we've had some deaths. We're probably around 7 or 8 deaths. We're still waiting on toxicology results to see what officially we have. But we're still having overdoses. But I'll tell you, what's saving lives is Narcan. Narcan is absolutely saving lives, and you never know when or where an overdose is going to happen. I encourage people to have it. It's free to get. You can go to the health department through their Project D.A.R.T and go to the Ottawa County Health Department and go get it. You take a quick training on how to use it. I brought some with me, and I always carry it, but we have Narcan, and it's a nasal spray. So basically this nasal spray, you put it up somebody's nose. There's a membrane in the back of your nose that acts like a sponge.
Okay.
So once you spray the medicine on the sponge is absorbed, goes into your bloodstream. It takes 2 to 5 minutes for it to circulate, and a person can go from not breathing to breathing. It is truly a miracle drug, because you've got somebody that is basically dead. All that's left is their heartbeat, and then they start gasping again, and then they start breathing again, and then they wake up, and then they're groggy, and then they start lying to you most times, saying they didn't use drugs. But they're in self-preservation mode, because they know that they just were doing something before they couldn't account for this amount of time. So,
is it true that sometimes it takes more than one dose of Narcan?
You
said it wears off sometimes, depending on maybe.
Again, I'm not a chemist, but the half-life of Narcan, it can rid your body faster than the rate of whatever the drug is. So if the Narcan's leaving at this rate and it catches up to the opiates, you could, in theory, require further doses. It's not unheard of that somebody. I had somebody that actually attempted suicide with, I believe it was morphine. But she had to be on a Narcan drip for quite a while. So a little bit different than what we deal with.
But just get it. You don't have to worry about what. Just
and it's free.
It's
free. You can go to pharmacies and get it. Just absolutely get it. Go to the health department, and it's free. And it's so easy to use. And if you're not CPR certified, get CPR certified. Just not just for this, but for life. I think that everybody should be CPR certified.
I think it's almost I think it's a requirement in school.
Oh, I hope it is. I hope it is, because and when I go into the classrooms, I tell the students, I said, how many of you ate today? And they all, of course I ate today. And I say, was the possibility there for somebody to choke that was around you? And they said, well, absolutely. And I said, would you rather know what to do in that situation, or what if you had a family member that went down for some unknown reason? You never know. And instead of running around like a crazy person with your arms in the air saying, I don't know what to do, get the skills, learn how to do it. It's 6 hours, 8 hours in a classroom?
Yeah, I think so.
I challenge the students. I say, you spend that long in a class each day.
Very much worth it.
And then you'll be a life-saving machine.
So there are, as we talked about, fewer deaths, which is great, from the program, from Narcan, from a variety of things. Overdoses are still happening, but is it sometimes, a lot of times, the same individuals, or do you think there's more people trying it, or is it?
I think that awareness has definitely played a key into overdose deaths coming down. I think Narcan is probably, more of the reason why the overdose death numbers are down, especially in the hands of law enforcement. I'll tell you, when the sheriff and the police departments, when they started carrying Narcan, that's where it really turned the tide, because they're on 24/7.
Right.
But I think that I think awareness has played into it to
Sure.
some degree, and I think that people are seeing it more. It's more publicized, and
Sure.
and they're trying to drop the stigma of mental health
Mental
and
health.
addiction wrapped into addiction.
Absolutely. It's
So,
widespread. I mean,
I
it's
think
not,
people are reaching out a little bit more, and I think that I can't speak for everywhere, but I can speak for Ottawa County. I mean, if you're going to have an issue, I mean, there's a lot of people that want to help. So,
And the beautiful thing about using Narcan or saving somebody from an overdose is you have some of your greatest advocates, peer supporters who were saved, who
Right.
overdosed and were saved, and finally hit the rock bottom maybe, or
yeah, nobody is going to. I've never walked in their shoes, is the best way to put it. And if they say, why do you keep Narcan in people? Why do they keep Narcan? Because it's somebody's son, daughter, mom, dad. That is someone to somebody.
Yep.
Is what is the reason why you do it.
And you never know that might be the time where they're like, oh my gosh, I need to help people.
Look at, we have got some fantastic people that have joined the fight because we gave them a chance. And it wasn't necessarily because they overdosed. Some of them they did, but not all of them. But I mean, Ken Bauer is in recovery. Jeff Schill is in recovery. Katie Shepard and Jody Z. These people are in our community leading, the peer support in our sober housing. Like, if we didn't have them, a lot of people would be lost.
They'd look at you or me and be like, "What? You don't know?"
Yeah, I've never walked in your shoes, and they do call me out. But the nice thing is that even in the middle of the night, those guys show up. If I call them, I said, "Do you want to?" When the addict that just overdosed, it feels like they have nothing. I say, "Well, we can call somebody right now, and I'll show you that there's a whole community of people that want you to succeed.
That there's hope.
There is hope.
A lot of it.
It
in
is.
Ottawa County.
You're exactly right.
Any last minute thoughts in terms of I wish people knew, or something I forgot to ask, or anything?
Well, we're trying to boost our public awareness campaign. We're hoping to start up social media. We go into the community. Don't be surprised if you find a business card with a help pamphlet hanging on your door. Because we like to hit target areas, and we want people to feel comfortable with approaching us. Realize that you're not going to fix this problem by yourself. Very rarely do people fix a problem by themselves, I should say. There's like a 95% fail rate when this thing all started out, which those aren't good numbers. So you might as well leave it to the professionals that know how to get you to these places. But with the wheel, with all the spokes of housing and counseling, and mental health, stability, employment, religion, whatever it is that makes that person, 12-step programming, AA and 12-step programming is huge. Whatever it is that makes that wheel nice and structurally sound, the only thing that makes that wheel roll and makes it go forward is the individual. Because I hate the cliche, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. But that is most definitely the case. But we try to motivate people. We try to show them that there is most definitely hope. Yeah. We're not here to judge. We're not here to put you in the in jail, because it's funny because you'll have two police officers show up and it's like, oh, trust me, I'm from the government. I'm here to help. So and they're like looking at it's just like
And I guess maybe I should have covered this asked you this in the beginning. I feel like this is the case. You do show up because they could be arrested.
There's potential for charges to come out of it if they don't accept help.
Some help.
There's a lot more legality to that is an oversimplification. It's just not we don't say, well, if you're not going with us, you're going right to jail. But I mean, you've got to think of situations like sometimes people overdose and there's children involved, and that takes you down a whole other avenue that has to be pursued because the children have to be safe. You want to help everybody you can and make sure that the addict gets on the path to recovery. But I mean, now you've got children involved, and it's pretty complex
There's a lot
at
of moving
times.
parts.
There are, but there's a lot of willing and optimistic people that want to work to get to the same end result in Ottawa County. So
Very cool.
it's a great place to be.
Yes, it is. Thanks for sharing the good word.
Thank you very much.
All right, we're going to take a break and we'll be right back. And we're back. I want to thank Trevor for being our guest today, learning about the D.A.R.T program and what an important program it is for our county. There are a lot of people who are battling addiction, and sometimes the addiction wins a little bit, and that program is here to help those on the journey to recovery, to kind of stop that process and go on a different path. Excellent resource, such good collaboration in Ottawa County. A lot of people out there wanting to offer help and hope to people with addiction. If you want to call their office, it's 419-734-6845. They also have a nice resource card that Trevor mentioned you might find hanging on a door handle somewhere as they're out and about kind of marketing the program. And again, look into Narcan resources, CPR. You too can be part of the good fight to battle addiction out in our communities. So if you have an idea for a topic, you can reach me at the hospital or Mrs. Pels at the high school and share this information maybe with somebody that you know, or if it might be helpful. Just, again, spread the good word. And until we meet again, I encourage you to make time for health.